right now I only need to work like 5 hours a week roughly to do the bare minimum in my SMMA to hit about $1 million per year in revenue. Now, I work a lot more than that. I'm trying to get ahead and continue to grow it, but I only really need to work about 5 hours per week and I could if I wanted to. Like yesterday, I worked like 2 hours, and Monday's where I have most of my meetings. Now, in the comments though, somebody asked me what the structure of my agency looked like in terms of team members and this kind of thing. And I figured, well, a lot of people are probably curious to know what that looks like at this level of scale, but not only that, I think it's really important that you have a vision. If you don't have a vision, if you don't know what you're going after, then it becomes a lot harder, if not impossible, to achieve the thing, right? You need to know what you want, right? And for a silly example, if somebody plays hockey, for example, and they want to win the Stanley Cup, they're going to do everything in their power to get on a team that's most likely to win and then succeed in that environment as well. Now, I personally run my agency super lean. I come from a computer science and math background, so I'm like really, really big into logic and automation. So you'll see here that at this level of scale, there really aren't many moving parts within the company. And you may be shocked when I say that my agency is only comprised of 3 people other than myself. And again, it more or less completely runs on its own. But one thing that's really important is that the leaner you run your agency, the higher your profit margin, and really the less headaches and messiness there is for you to deal with. So that's why I'm such a big fan of running lean as opposed to just having a bunch of stuff falling all over the place, papers flying in the air, and people screaming. Now, I'm going to tell you exactly what the structure of my agency is, but that on its own isn't really going to do much for you. So what I also want to do is tell you what sequential steps you need to take in order to hit this level and what different phases of your agency really look like so that you know what path to walk more or less in order to hit this. Because if I just tell you this, there are a million ways to get there, and while I will tell you a path, it's a path that I have walked and that most people walk. It's really common. So it's reliable in that sense. Rules are meant to be broken, but this is a pretty, I guess, simple, not bulletproof way, but probably the easiest way to progress through the steps as quickly as possible and, get your agency to 7 figures. So what I really quickly want to run over is that there are, I guess, really 3 kind of main stages here that we're talking about, right? The first one is getting up to 10K per month. The next one is getting to like 50. And then the next one's getting to like 80 to 100, right? This is your like $1 million a year plus kind of range. So this is the ideal place to be, right? Now, in order to get to 80 to 100K per month, you need to first get to 10K per month. This was a really big mistake that I made, was doing the 50K per month or the 80K per month tasks in my business when I was in no position to be doing them, and they were actually really just me wasting my own time and kind of running in circles, not really doing the productive stuff that I should have been doing. Now, that being said, getting up to 10K per month is, you don't need anybody but other than yourself, right? So it's really just you. Now, that being said, what is it that you're doing exactly? Well, you're more or less just, generating leads, booking appointments, closing appointments, kind of like doing whatever you can to generate revenue, which means oftentimes you're like, if somebody says, oh, can you do this kind of custom thing? Oftentimes you're going to be in this like slightly desperate state of mind because you're trying to make money that you just say yes to a bunch of different things. And like, it's cool because you get some interesting experience in doing that. But what you realize once you hit 10K per month is that like, okay, well, if I want to hit 50 or like 100K per month, then what needs to happen is I need to productize this thing and start doing less as opposed to doing more. So at this point, what you want to do is, generally speaking, you'll want to make sure that you can stay stable at 10K per month with one very reliable lead generation method, one very reliable appointment booking method, one very reliable appointment closing method for one product or service. That's the kicker, right? So in order to get to 50K per month, this is where you start adding people, right? Now, one of the requirements, like I said, is sell one thing. It's not a requirement, but like play to your advantages, you really shouldn't be selling more than one thing, because otherwise, I mean, think about it this way, right? Like at this point, you're like okay at sales and you're like okay at selling something. What you don't yet understand, especially not at this stage, and a lot of people at this stage don't even understand this, but what you don't understand is how deep like sales goes, right? If you sell to two different niches, for example, you're doing double the work. And double the work is not, I can just use my sales skills and talk to this guy instead of this guy and sell him something very similar. Not even close, right? Prospects in different niches have different pain points, different desires, different problems that they're facing. There are different nuances. There's different language to each of these businesses. They're different market sizes. So you can't do stuff that in a market of 50,000 people that you can do in a market of 2 million people. All right. You need to structure your company completely differently to hit certain levels of scale in two different markets like that. So if you just sell one thing, then it's going to make your life so much easier and it will help you scale so much faster, right? So at this point, sometimes people will sell multiple things. And again, it's just to kind of get cash in the door. I personally didn't do that. I only stuck to one thing because, what do you know, I was doing the 50K per month things before I ever hit 10K per month. Again, not the smartest thing, but there you go. Now, once you have these methods locked in, now what you're going to find when you push 15, 20 grand a month, even when you hit 10 usually, is you're going to be really busy for like 50, 60 plus hours per week of work on your plate. And it's just going to kind of feel like it's building and building, especially if you decide, things are going well, let's increase the lead volume. Like you don't even have any idea of what's about to come if you keep doing that. So this is where usually when you have something built and solid, what you're going to want to do is start delegating things to people. So in order to get to your 50K per month, you're usually going to want to add somebody like an appointment setter, because in order to supply the call volume required to hit 50K per month, the sales call volume, you would need to be booking appointments like 6 to 8 hours a day kind of thing. And you just don't have that time, especially on top of fulfillment. So you're going to want to have a fulfillment person of some sort to step in, like your media buyer, or depending on what agency you run. If you run like a creative agency, maybe you already have that. Totally situational, but somebody to do the client work, or at least the bulk of it. You're still going to want to be in the client work. The idea of totally being out of client work is not really much of a thing, especially considering building relationships with people is one of the most important things for retention, as well as generating referrals. So, a little bit of a hard truth, but hard conversations are necessary. These are going to be your main people that you're going to want to bring in. I would usually do one at a time, a few weeks apart, make sure everything's okay, because when you go to hire an appointment setter, let's say you're working 60 hours per week, well, now you need to spend extra time putting out the job posting, reading through applications, booking your interviews, taking your interviews, deciding on a person, and then once that person joins, then you have to train them while you're still setting appointments, while you're still doing fulfillment, so on and so forth. So if you go, let's go fast, let's get an appointment setter and a fulfillment person right now, let's go, and you're already working 60 hours a week, like have fun, man. Like you're just gonna put yourself through a month of hell when you could put yourself through 6 weeks or 7 weeks of a little bit more work than usual, right? Whereas, by the end of those 7-8 weeks, you're still going to be training people, but the bulk of the work is going to be off your plate at this point. And your main role is going to be being a salesperson and also a manager, right? So just to be clear, your roles are being a salesperson and a manager at this point, right? So let's even just do this. Right, so that's more or less what it looks like getting up to this 50K per month number-ish. 40, 50, 60, 35, 30, this kind of stuff. Usually you're going to do your first hire kind of somewhere in between these two, like anywhere from really like 10 to 15, depending on the type of outreach method you use. You may have like outreach VAs and stuff, and you might even have those like sub 10K per month. I personally did. I had VAs over here My bad, I forgot about this, but I had VAs for outreach over here. I had a couple of them. And for example, a guy that I'm working with right now, he has one VA got him, two VAs got him to about 10 grand a month. Now he's pushing he's pushing for like 60K per month right now. And his situation is he has a fulfillment person. He hired 2 appointment setters because he doesn't have paid ads. He doesn't have a VSL funnel. So all of his call bookings are going based on outbound leads and dialing. I have a VSL, video sales letter funnel, where I'm using paid ads, and that books like half the calls. So that eliminates the need for me having a second setter. And I'll explain where exactly I'm at shortly. But at this point, you're a salesperson, a manager. You're making sure you're able to keep people satisfied, pay them fairly, get quality work done. This is where you're going to run into problems of setters not making the calls they need to make, or this kind of stuff. But usually you're like 10 to 20 or 30 is where you're going to bring on your first full-time person, like you're like an appointment setter or a fulfillment person, where they're like working 40 hours per week. Here it's like kind of like part-timers, or maybe you have a full-time VA, that kind of stuff. So that's what 50K per month is like. And now to break into the 80 to 100K per month situation, I'll break down for you what it is that I'm doing. So in my agency, it's really quite simple. So the first thing I have is a fulfillment person, full-time. So what he'll do is he'll do the full onboarding process, the ad maintenance process. And with this, what's really interesting is that I run my agency. Everybody who's seen it is like, whoa, like you charge so little. This is so weird. Like, how do you do this? I made the maintenance process like borderline fully automated, where all somebody really has to do is just like read a set of conditions and like manage accounts really easily. They don't even need media buying experience. So you can get people for really cheap to run your ads if you can set up a maintenance process and document your maintenance process. And I'll even just write here, well documented maintenance process, that allows you to get work done for really cheap, which gives you competitive edge from a pricing standpoint. Some people want to charge a lot, like, sure, that's fine. This is just what I do. So that's what this guy does. He also does like email and general customer support. So that's number one. So fulfillment, totally handled. I talked to this guy for like an hour a week. I have 30 minutes set aside, usually at this point, because I have more time on the calendar. We'll go over. I'll train him a little bit more, this kind of stuff, because I brought him on when I was in such a rush, and I didn't train him to the extent that I had wanted to. So that's what I'm focusing on a little bit more now. The other thing I have is one appointment setter. So one appointment setter, also full time. So she's based in the Philippines. What she does is calls all my leads and books Zoom meetings. Pretty simple. I've got a fully outlined script with objection handlers. Where do you get these objection handlers? By taking 1,000 calls. Eventually you just learn how to answer these questions and convince people and get them really hyped up to hop on a Zoom call. You don't have to take 1,000 calls, but you're going to want to take at least a few hundred to get a good idea, so that you got to be good at what you're doing in order to know if people are doing their job properly, in order for them to respect you also, right? You got to practice what you preach, as I'm doing in this case. From here, what I have is, so there's me, right? What I do is I'm a manager, and I'm also doing group coaching calls with my clients. This is like an ad, like a little value add kind of thing. At the moment, I'm doing one per week for about an hour. I'm looking to probably hire a client to do at least one call per week. I'm probably gonna stick on the calls myself. Just because, again, the relationship building, the retention, the so on and so forth. And then from here, I have a one full-time sales rep. So I'm off of sales calls August 24th. I'm going to Europe. So Wednesday the 23rd is my last day on sales calls for the agency, which is extremely hype. at least the last day for now, because if I want to add a second sales rep on, which I might do in Q4, I'm going to need to start taking the overflow of calls, because I'm going to need to increase call volume, hire another setter, this kind of stuff. And I'll talk to you in a second about getting to the next level up to like your 200 grand a month plus kind of thing. Usually a rep will close somewhere in the area of 70 to 100K per month in business, depending on your price. So if you have like a really high price point, they can close double this in business. But like I said, I go for a lower price point. So that's what it looks like for me. Usually in this range is what they're doing. That's more or less that. And this is US dollar. I'm Canadian, so 100 grand US is like 130 Canadian, something like that. Full transparency on that, and this is US dollar as well. So that's more or less that. Now, when you're looking to get into this territory of like I guess you're 160 to 200 plus, it's kind of funny because it really just comes down to a matter of a few things. One is scaling lead gen, right? Getting more setters, getting another sales rep, getting another fulfillment person. So there's one thing I want you to take away from this, which is it starts off with you and you're doing everything and it's all hell and it sucks and you're like really busy and like you're kind of screwing up and like people get mad at you because you kind of suck and like all this kind of stuff, and it's really hard to do and you're lonely and whatever. And not necessarily lonely, maybe, or maybe not. Some people are cool with doing it on their own. That was more or less the case for me. But then from there again, you sell one thing, you bring on an appointment setter, a fulfillment person, then you become more of a salesperson and a manager, and fulfillment, and this can also be like customer support. Then you move into this area, and what happens here, the beauty of being here, is now you're like, oh sick, I can work 5 hours a week right now if I want to. That's my situation. Again, yesterday I worked for 2 hours and I did more than I even needed to. Today I worked almost all day, but I slept in for an hour for the first time in like forever. I'm pretty burnt out right now, to be fair. I'm really kind of waiting on my vacation, and I'm toning down here on the sales calls and stuff. But now, the beauty of being here is like, cool, the thing's kind of doing everything you've wanted it to. This is where you're like, whoa, no way, like this is what I always wanted. Then you're like, you might be like, oh, I want more. I want to do more, right? Not even necessarily I want more money. That may be the case, but it might just be like, to me, business is a sport and money's the scoreboard. So I want to scale as far as I can. I'm very competitive. So I see other people doing well and I'm like, oh, that guy can do it. That's honestly just kind of how I am. I'm definitely, I think at the moment, I'm not fully decided, but I may take the path to exit my agency, which means I'm going to be more pushing like, sure, 160 to 200 plus, but in that case, even as far as like 400K per month kind of thing. That's going to be a significantly larger team. We're going to be looking more, especially in an agency where you have multiple fulfillment people. This is where we're going to be looking at more like several fulfillment people, several sales reps. You're going to probably have a sales team manager. You can even have a head of operations to run the fulfillment team. You're going to have the set of like multiple setters. You're probably going to have like 20 to 30 people in your company at this point. I may take that approach here, although I'm kind of undecided at the moment. I'm just going to try to kind of like reap the benefits of being at this stage, get paid for a little while because I've been working really hard. But from here, it's kind of like more of the hiring stuff. But now, since you have the leverage, since you've hired and trained some of these people before, you have the experience. What I'm trying to say in all of this is it actually gets way easier to scale as you grow. Your leverage increases so much, it exponentially. Like you look at an entrepreneur's like revenue growth curve, it's like this. Like it's definitely not like this. It takes you forever to get going, and then eventually there comes a point where like you're just going and you're hardly doing anything. like at this point, right? Like I'm like here on the curve right now where, you know, when all is said and done, my ads are a little bit wonky right now, so I'm trying to get those costs down. Sales rep just locked in. So from here, now the agency on its own is, you know, able to profit a healthy amount of money every single month. And now I have the time and the leverage to be able to go, okay, well, I have all these skills of hiring people, of generating leads, of closing deals, etc. That, okay, well, now all I have to do is focus on my lead gen skill and just do more of this. And it doesn't take long to hire 3 setters, right? One of the guys I'm working with, he hired 2 setters at the same time. And just like that, you know, he literally, no word of a lie, went from like 12.5K last month here to 11K in the first 8 days of August. Just about 12K in the first 8 days of August, because we scaled his lead gen and then brought on, in his case, 2 appointment setters because he's just doing cold outreach. Again, I do ads, so I only need 1 appointment setter to be in this category here. But now his leverage is increasing, right? Now he's becoming the salesperson manager. You get the idea. So it's just when you don't have that leverage, it takes, you know, if these are units of time, right? These are maybe 6-month increments, for example. I mean, in his case, it's been less than it's been like a year and a half. So he's like here, right? What happens is like your first 6 months, maybe you're at like $2,000 a month, 3-4 grand a month, something like that. Then maybe 6 months later you hit 10, then you hit 25, or whatever the situation is, right? These are poor examples. Maybe here you're at 5, 10, 25, 50, and then you're 80 to 100 range, right? And that's 2 years is pretty fast for that. It depends if you have a partner, so on and so forth. I kind of feel like I'm rambling here. I don't know. But yeah, that's scaling a social media marketing agency in 2023. Watch whatever's on screen. See you there.